Good evening. Would you please stand for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance? Councilman Rogers.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day, for all the blessings you've given to each and every one of us here tonight. We pray that you'll be with us and guide us as we go about the business of the city and as we continue to work on the upcoming budget. We continue to pray for those serving the armed forces abroad, serving in harm's way. Be with them, guard them, protect them. These things we pray in Christ's name, and amen.
Amen. Councilman Elam, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 4 people that have signed up this evening to speak at the public forum. So Henry Sawson, if you will go first, please.
Thank you. I didn't forget about you guys last meeting. My wife's family, they had some issues, so she had to deal with it. So I was playing Mr. Mom, and I almost didn't make it here, but I took my wife out last night. So I'm here talking today. Going through, we're in the midst of a budget cycle. And I know when we do budget cycles at work, we always have what are our goals and objectives for the upcoming year, and then everything builds up around that. So that way when programs get cut, then you can cut funds accordingly. Does the city have their goals and objectives outlined for the upcoming fiscal year that you guys are putting a budget up against?
I guess I don't understand what you're calling goals and objectives.
Well, what does the city plan on, working on in the 2019, July 1st on through the June 30th of next year? Because putting a budget together, there's got to be a plan or what you guys are looking to do, and then say, okay, we're going to need X amount of funds to be able to do certain things. I mean, or are you guys just putting a budget together without doing the other stuff?
We have and have been working off of a 5 and to some degree a 10-year plan for a number of years, which kind of leads to that, I think.
And yes, every one of our capital expenditures for equipment replacements and paving projects and everything are included in that budget as normal operating expenses. So yes, Henry, we do have a plan.
Okay, I was just asking because it's like I know you guys were talking every time we're going to need this, we're going to need that, and how everything comes up. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Daryl Nonamaker.
My name is Darren Onamaker, and I don't know whether you all have noticed that Mr. Harper has moved in down on 28th Street to remove those buildings and stuff. I see that he's tearing the asbestos shingles off of Harry Whaley's whole house and garage. I worked 45 years in the carpenters, and I went through asbestos abatement class. And I don't know whether he's doing it according to what he's supposed to be doing to monitor the asbestos that he's tearing off there. I don't know whether me as a private citizen, I'm not allowed on the property, but I think the city ought to send the code enforcer down there to see if he is doing it and containing the asbestos that he's tearing off. Could you do that?
We've already done it. I was waiting for you to finish before I answer.
I'm finished.
Okay, fine. Mr. Harper did come in and get a demolition permit. He is a master asbestos removal company, and so all of the abatement procedures and all of the standards that are to be met, he is very well qualified to do that. He does have the state permits and did do the proper notification to the DEP for all that. So he is as legitimate as you can be in that. And he does have a demolition permit, which was issued by our code enforcement officer.
Okay, I know that. I knew that he was an asbestos abatement. What his men does for him, it's up to them. It's their health. They've got white suits on, but they do not wear respirators. They didn't have no respirators on the day when I seen them removing it. They had a straight hose going up under the shingle, letting it drop onto the ground. And I don't know whether they're just picking it up and throwing it in the dump truck or what they're doing. But I'd like to have an answer of how they're doing it.
The proper disposal for the asbestos is it has to be contained and taken to an asbestos dump. There are only certain places in the state where you can take that, and so he is doing it the proper way.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let me answer one more thing for you,
Okay.
since you are up there. Last week you asked me about a street light that was on
Yeah.
28th Street.
Yes.
That is a private street light. It was installed by
Okay.
John Shank years ago,
Okay.
and Mr. Shank paid the bill for as long as he had the State Farm Agency, and now Mr. Knopfsinger owns that, and Mr. Knopfsinger pays that. That is not a city street light, so the fact that it is pointed towards his parking lot, he had it installed to do that.
Okay. I just see stuff like that. I'm not coming down on the city or anything. I just wanted to know, because it does look like a street light that's on the street.
You believe it or not, you can get the power company to put a street light in for you,
Okay.
but you have to pay.
Okay.
Typically, all the ones that we do, are on the streets facing the roadway, but that is a private one, and it is paid privately.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Kim?
Good evening. Third time I'm going to talk about the same thing. So as discussed before, the city of Vienna, we pay $1.27 million for our health insurance, and it's through Highmark. And I brought up before this council before, talking about PEIA insurance. The city of Parkersburg has PEIA insurance, and they insure almost 3.5 times the amount of employees that we insure for just about $45,000, $50,000 more. And the reason that cost is so much lower is PEIA insurance has 200,000 people in its pool that they're insuring. We have to go out like a private business goes out and find insurance for our employees when we have less than 100 employees. So that risk pool is so much smaller. So we're not able to leverage the discounts that through like PEIA, okay? So that's why the rates are so much higher. So another thing about the way we get our insurance is that if an employee gets, a catastrophic disease or cancer or something that's going to cause those rates to then go up the next year, there is no way to try to figure out how that's going to affect your budget going in. So right now, our health insurance is about 15% of our budget. If something would happen, you have a premature baby that requires a lot of care, or like I said, cancer or whatever it is, heart disease, somebody has a massive heart attack, and it causes those premiums to go up. What if you're at 15% this year? What if you're at 20% next year? Where do those cuts come from? Or maybe they can't be cuts. Maybe they have to come from the taxpayer. There is no way that you can really control those costs. They can get out of hand pretty quickly. And I mentioned before that PEIA insurance, because it's through the state, that those rates have stayed pretty consistent over the last 5 or 6 years. There's been hardly any increase whatsoever. From a budget standpoint, that certainly would be a lot nicer to be able to use that number versus something that's kind of a moving target. And another thing that was mentioned is health insurance is part of the compensation package for the employees. Sure, I get that, and it is true. But, all employees are not the same. You may have an employee who's 30 years old, and they have a different need for themselves and their family maybe than an employee who's like 55 years old. So with PEIA insurance, you've got several different plans that the employees would be able to pick from versus the one plan that you're able to put forth that you've decided on through Highmark. So, and just because The city overpays for insurance because they refuse to go to something like PIA where you're able to leverage all the discounts. Because you're overpaying for that insurance, you can't really call that compensation to the employee. That's just, you're just overpaying. Mr. Schwindeman, when he was here and he had his presentation, he mentioned that there were hidden costs to PIA insurance. Now, there may be, I don't know. But he never said what they were. And as I mentioned before in an example that I gave, where I thought the city could save over $400,000 in family insurance using PEIA, I doubt that there are $400,000 worth of hidden costs in insurance through PEIA. Mr. Schwindeman also mentioned that the solvency of PEIA. Well, yeah, it's been in the news a lot lately. But I don't think the governor and the state legislature is going to let PEIA fail. Because if it does, that means it fails for all the teachers, the state troopers, everybody who works for the state. That would be a catastrophic event, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that's a false fear. And the other thing that really bothers me about this is the lack of transparency. I've mentioned the code 151.06, the ordinance, and maybe hopefully the city attorney can kind of give us a little bit of an insight on this, which says that the city shall decide what the health insurance plans are going to be, not the employees. What you have now is a situation where you have the mayor, Amy Roberts, the finance director, the human rights person, and department heads that sit around with Mr. Schwindeman, and they decide what insurance plans are going to be presented, what they're going to pick. Where I feel like that should come from the council, because in the ordinance it says, you know, the city shall decide. That's the council. The council controls the checkbook, the council approves the budget, etc. It doesn't say the employees pick it and then the city pays for it. It doesn't say that. It also says that the city shall pick the most cost-effective plan. So I see no reason why plans cannot be presented to this council, and the council can then look at the different plans and pick the most cost-effective plan for the city, okay? That's not what's happening here, and I think that that's really not the intent of the ordinance, and I think that's leading to a lot of the problems that we have. And I think this is something, everybody keeps ignoring it. I keep saying PIA, but nobody wants to actually look at that. So I hope that you do, because once again, I hope the attorney here could give us a ruling on that ordinance, because I don't think it's being done properly. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
You want me to give a ruling on it?
I do not. Brandon Powell?
Good evening. My name is Brenda Powell, and I'm wanting to ask a few things or talk about a few things, actually. Going back to February the 1st, or excuse me, January the 1st. No, it was February. No, it was February the 1st. For the utility board meeting, it was February the 1st. And at that meeting, at the end of it, it was actually stated that the water quality testing wasn't back yet. But yet the water was okay. I don't know how we come up with that. I mean, if you have the testing back, then you can actually say that it's okay. But if you haven't had it back yet, I don't know how you could say that. The other thing is that we have right now with the issues with the C8 and things of that sort, we haven't had any updates regarding water testing with the Congressional Task Force. That was actually in the paper on the 24th of January, and they said that they were going to do this study, but there wasn't anything said about when it was going to begin or when it would end, when the people would be informed. There just wasn't anything said, and in that article also it had stated something about Commerce making a statement. That statement was never put in public. It wasn't in the public. I don't know what was said from Commerce. I don't know whether anybody else does, but there wasn't anything. Those are some things that is a concern too, whether or not the city has any information on that, whether or not anybody has been informed in any of the municipalities, on where that status is, if anybody knows anything, because ultimately it's not being put in the paper. So with our water and the testing and the study, it's just a concern. And I just wondered if the city knew anything about that. So I'll stop there and let you answer that before I go on to something else, if that's okay.
There's been nothing released.
Nothing at all?
None.
Okay. I was just curious because nothing's been in the paper. So I didn't know whether or not the municipalities are actually informed or contacted in regards to this study, and if you're involved in it.
No.
No. Okay. Well, that takes care of that. At the last council meeting last week, and it was brought up about the John Mansfield property. And with that being said, there was a Rotary Club meeting prior to that on an update or a meeting discussing with you, Mayor, with the Rotary Club, with the John Mansfield property. There isn't anything that has been said regarding the property. We haven't really had any much of an update, but you did go on at the Rotary Club. They did say that you had a meeting with them and gave an update on it or gave information regarding it. The thing is that Councilman Leach had made a statement that the risk assessment and the site characterization testing was done, and all of these has been coming together and being finished with the property. My question is when is there going to be a meeting, a town hall meeting, to where that you will be able to present this information of what has been found and what is going on with the property and what the plans are, if you have anything set up for that?
I guess I don't really know what answers you're looking for there. Mr. Leach has given updates regularly as far as the testing has gone. The state of West Virginia has accepted our plan of action for the remediation of that. You know, all of the results are the same. They haven't changed. They're the same as what we've been talking about for about the last year and a half. And so, you know, the plan to clean up the 3 areas that are down there, as soon as the weather breaks, we're going to implement that plan. And once that's done, then we should receive our letter of no further action from the state. And then we will move on to repurposing that piece of property. But the testing that was done, the results are the same. There has been no change as far as the last year and a half.
Okay,
So-
that would be on the Riverside property, probably what you're speaking about, but I'm
Yes.
also talking about the plant site property,
We-
because there was testing that was done there too.
Yeah, but we don't have those results back. It's 2 separate projects.
I thought that Councilman Leach had made the statement that everything was back on both pieces of property.
You may have misunderstood him, but we do not have the results back yet
Okay.
for the industrial side.
Do
We
you
not.
know when that it will be?
I do not. I mean, they're still analyzing them, so we do not have them.
Okay. Well, that's all that I have. I just thought I'd ask. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for February the 14th, 2019. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll that all members of council are present, with the exception of Mr. Leach. Having a quorum, we will proceed. The minutes from the special council meeting held on February the 7th, 2019 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, then the minutes will stand approved as posted. Since Mr. Leach is not here this evening, I will do the reconciliation of funds. You all do have a reconciliation of funds that's dated February the 14th. In examining this, you'll notice that the city is solvent and all of our bills are paid. Before we move into our regular agenda this evening, I would like to ask for an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Mr. Skogstad, if you need to, you can cite whatever the code is?
I don't, but if you want me to, I can.
That's not for me. I mean, if you, it's a personnel matter, so.
Personnel matters sufficient.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion for an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. We go into executive session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none then. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record reflect we went into executive session at 7:21. Chief Piper, would you join us, please? Hey, Mike, we're not going to be here tonight.
Yeah, it's off now. I'll restart it. I would say so. Yeah, yeah. Tell me what that motion is. Why? Because it's the same thing. I know. Like, I want a motion now. Is it restaurant or something? Was that your,
My boss said, she took pictures
having a lot of that in her paper. She's talking to Christina today. She seems reasonable. She's always, I've talked to her many times. She's always very nice.
I've always really liked her. Whenever I was in high school, I started with the newspaper. 15. And I was wanting an internship. I started off on well intern, but you know, when I was in the summer, it was one of those, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get my foot in the door, and I was more worried about that. Getting paid for it at that time.
Yeah, sure.
And so I got my foot in the door whenever I was still in high school. Yeah. Wanted to get a chance to go back, and then I kept me in the church and generally was like, and I took break for college. I applied for the there were no people who went again, but you applied for the position as well, so it was, you know, had some degrees, some, you know, works in, out there painting, like that, and I went to them all because she did. I paid for her. I think it's a reduction. But she's a really good boss. My husband got a promotion today. I'll be down there next week.
Where's he working?
He's works up in West Union at the West Union Bank. He was a bookkeeper. He is now the chief general ledger accountant. He gets his own office in a little name plaque. So I was telling him. They don't have these sister banks. Well, one of them has kind of a sister bank, but the West Union Bank itself doesn't have any. And its merger was 5 years in population. So we lived in Karen, it was about a 30-minute drive from both of us, but we, any part of it, they were better property on the land, and we also gave us a side student, and relationship with where the bank hours. It was just, here, and plus, I don't know the parents' grant's been ongoing since she, and she got there, which is why I don't know. Every kid from kindergarten through
Where they got it was taking his license, and he can't run for elected office.
Okay, I just didn't know where they used, like, the parks for me to come on the pictures. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. That's a good idea.
It sure is, right.
There we go. Is that okay? Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Well, sure we can.
Oh, yeah. Strategic planning, which I'm not interested, that's our meeting.
This one is just basically,
Budget.
we're just gonna be setting this thing because they don't have any agenda. He just finished the trip out for it. He just finished up and then the next one will basically be.
I think it's all about the same one.
Yeah, I had to get it. Are you watching me on things? That is not even fair. I seen your name come up. Yeah, that was that. My dad.
Yeah, I knew that was going, but I wasn't aware they'd gotten it all later.
Definitely, it's been a long.
Yeah.
That we've got to be here. Well, but I question how.
Yeah.
They might know. They might know.
I wasn't thinking of that, I was just thinking.
Yeah.
I'm still eating tonight, and I don't know what I'm picking for dinner tomorrow. She said, I don't want that. And I said, well, that would mean I don't have to cook. Yes, or at least cook for you.
So,
She actually brought me some well, if she can, if she will. Tortellini. It's a pasta. It's stuffed with cheese and meat. It's not like ravioli. It's not square like ravioli. It's like a half shot. Yeah.
But she said we still have some, at least give them
Well, okay, so here's what
But it's not like, well, because it's controlled, I mean, the federal law, right? So you get to the states, right, and there's not.
And there's so many of these states are, like, they're not going against it. Because the federal, if the federal government would legalize it, there would be a problem. That's like the Western that thing's happening.
Seventh grade, sixth grade, and eighth grade.
And go against
We went,
schedule one of the.
The problem is with the bank,
Yeah, but we need a bank that would back up, and most of our federal.
well, that's because they're talking, there's certain people who are talking about a state where they can do this.
So like with California, they don't have too much federal money.
and then in May, again,
They should be
again, we didn't make it. We went around to see what
I don't know.
clubs and stuff that they had. So we're going back, very few do.
So I mean, it's still bad. But it is better than.
I've heard the cafeteria.
Where are you gonna pay this?
Next year.
Did you get a desk now? My niece is Anna Earl, do you know her?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my niece. She is too.
We were just talking about that. We're gonna retake a course.
That's great. Well, I know a teacher who's here in Vienna, her name is Corinne Cole, and she will take any student anytime. I need a little bit more hands-on and know what's going on. So she's gonna take,
we were gonna spend an hour arguing over insurance.
Oh, let's go.
We're gonna spend an hour arguing over executive session.
You think so?
I know the name.
Oh, I don't want to deal with it. That's it's crazy.
I recognize the name.
Wherever you see the man, you see challenge.
Yeah, I'm rewinding and I want to hear what's going on.
Let the record reflect that we came back in at 7:55. It was to discuss a personnel matter and no decisions were made. First item on our agenda this evening under new business is a discussion for the employee health insurance plan. Mr. Elam, you asked for this, sir?
Yeah, I just want to, I'll start out by saying I recuse myself from the insurance committee that Mayor Rappy alluded to because I do work for Highmark now. But this, and I need to get clarification from Russ because this has nothing to do, my thing tonight was I want to have a general discussion about city insurance, which is a big topic. My position at Highmark, I'm not in management. I have no direct involvement with the billing of Highmark. I have nothing to do with that aspect, so there's no personal gain on my part. I know I've been informed by Russ that there could be an issue with me talking about things, but I feel like this is discussion I started long before Highmark, and that's all it was going to be. It is going to be a discussion about the city insurance that we have. You know, we say I work at Highmark, yes, but am I a direct beneficiary of anything that business to conduct with Highmark? No. So I don't see why I'm not able to talk about this because it's just a general discussion.
Let me clarify. I talked informally with the West Virginia Ethics Commission. We've had issues before where things that look like they could be potentially conflicts on first blush ultimately end up not being conflicts. One of the earlier examples that questions that I got a formal ethics opinion on, or at least a written opinion on, was whether or not a city council person could also be an employee of the city. They sent back an opinion and listed, certain parameters which allowed a council member to continue to operate. I think the same reasoning applies to Mr. Elam. I think as long as the discussion doesn't veer off into Highmark specifically renewing a Highmark contract or anything that would specifically benefit them, then I think that Mr. Elam right now, as I said, would be fine in participating in the conversation. So I think he could talk about procedural things with the city. I think he could, or as far as how the city conducts its bids and so forth. But and tonight's a discussion, so it's not really a moot point, but it's probably not a road we need to get down too far because he's not going to be taking, and council's not going to be taking any action that could benefit Highmark. But that said, if the conversation were to take a turn where addressing Highmark specifically, Mr. Elam would probably have to recuse himself, and as silly as the recusal process seems to be in West Virginia, When you recuse yourself, you have to get up, state the reason for your recusal, and leave the room. So for right now, unless Highmark is specifically addressed, I think Mr. Elam's fine to participate in the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Russ. My big thing, and I know we had a member of the community speak about the insurance. You know, it's been on my mind for a long time, not just here recently. You know, I know we keep reiterating that the insurance rates haven't risen for the employee, besides the now $30 a month individual amount was increased last year or something. I've been doing my research as far as that goes, and right now, and I don't know if Mayor, you said you were to talk to the city of Parkersburg, a few places, to see how they did it. Well, I took upon liberty myself. I got with the city of Parkersburg numbers, and what I was talking about, you guys didn't seem to follow me along as far as the percentage goes, and you guys had some questions about percentage, what we were talking about. The way Parkersburg does their insurance is, well, they have 258 people that are benefit eligible for, and these are exact numbers, so please write these down. And these employees, the 258 that are benefit eligible, they pay, their insurance costs $2.58 million. The employee contribution toward that $2.58 million is right around $725,000. As compared to the city of Vienna, and these are actual numbers, our budget is $1.277 million, and our employees pay $83,809 out of that $1.2 million, which is roughly about $16,000 per employee as compared to Parkersburg, $10,000 an employee. And the way that Parkersburg does theirs is they have, you know, we always talk about, I know everybody wants, we always talk about the bottom dollar or the amount hour that we pay people. You know, I know we did a wage study, but insurance was not included in the wage study. So looking at a total compensation package, you know, we can't compare our hourly rates for our employees to Parkersburg because their insurance is so, they pay so much more for their insurance. They have it down to, if you make, there's 3 tiers of insurance. You make under $36,000, you pay 15% if you're tobacco free, 20% if you're tobacco user. Tier 2 is $36,000 to $42,000, you pay 20% of your insurance premium. And $42,000 above, you pay 25%. So what I see is, depending on your tier of level, so the person making $80,000 is not paying the same as the person making $15,000, and that's what I'm talking about percentages. We have no percentage higher than 6% in Vienna. So the most employee pays in Vienna is, I think, 6% as compared to the 15, 20, and 25% that the employees pay in Parkersburg. So my thing is, yeah, not to stick it to the employees, like I said that before, that we haven't had a raise in 19 years of our insurance. And it will never change unless we see something similar to this where we do pay a percentage. I mean, I don't know if it's 10%, I don't know the number. You know, that's where I want a discussion of what we can do. So this doesn't, me and Mr. Bibby said, you know, a couple of months ago, we can do nothing, or we can raise the rates or whatever. You know, we have to do something, because if 19 years is going to turn into 29 years if something's not done. And I asked Mayor Rapp and I think Stephanie for the protocol, ordinance, whatever, of how we choose our city insurance, you know, and I never received anything, so I'm still kind of waiting to see what the process is, why city council isn't involved, the same questions I've asked, and how, you know, we use, I know Mayor Rapp, you said something about we're not in the insurance business, we always rely on Swindeman. Well, Swindeman, I mean, yeah, you got to pay for your service. Yes, he makes money off this stuff, but why we have one person looking for one insurance, and we always go with Highmark, because I know, I forget the exact dates, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a quote that came in from another insurance agency for about $300,000 or $400,000 less, but we still went with Highmark. So I don't know why we continue to do this thing over and over. I just need to know what parameters are given to Schwindeman to choose this thing, why we use him, what's this committee we keep talking about that I've never seen any documentation, what information are they given? Because like you say, I said, the time we get the insurance information, it's already in the budget. I've never seen any numbers but the final number as far as that goes. And historically, I know when we put things out to bid, we go with the lowest bid, which isn't true for our insurance, according to some quotes we had a few years ago. So in another few things, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. You know, I don't know about the committee. I don't know how on this committee, you know, we talk about me being with Highmark, but not a big player, but how Mayor Rapp can choose the insurance for the city when he's a direct beneficiary of what we pay the city. And I know there's something out there you said to me, Russ, but I still don't see how Kathy Smith and Mayor Rapp get to choose our insurance, and how, because I didn't know this was going on. I bet you half the citizens of Vienna didn't know that the city employees pick their own insurance. Yes, we have a great police department. We have a great fire. I'm not complaining anything about it. No, Mayor, please don't go off on that tangent, because I know you do. But great employees. But what's fair is fair for the city of Vienna to compensate all that amount of money, everything except $83,000 to pay for insurance. And like Schwindeman said, it's probably a little higher tier than most people have, because I know, you know, through my education at Highmark, there's all these little add-ons that sweeten the pot for all these things, and it might be $1 or $2 a month, but when you're talking about 78 employees over a 12-month period, that stuff adds up. This insurance is not going to get any cheaper. I know that for a fact. Every year it's going to go up and up and up, but we're not passing that cost on to our employees whatsoever. You know, you like to say, I reiterate, Parkersburg's paying 15, 20, 25%, and some people in our city are paying 3 and 4%. Up until this past year, the individual is paying nothing. You know, so those days are over, I believe, as far as what we've been paying, and something needs to change. And I want it. And there's no formality of how we're doing this. You know, I've never seen the agenda of this so-called committee. I don't even know what they're called anymore. How it's chosen. We never see how many quotes we get. From what I think, it's like Schwindeman, this is what we had last year. Go try to find it again. You know, maybe that's how it's done. I hope it's not. But there's no transparency of how this stuff is chosen, and that's the problem a lot with the city of Vienna since I've taken office, is just the transparency, which we don't have. And this, to me, it looks shady, you know. And I shouldn't use the word shady, because I don't want to assume anything. But it's just not up front with everything, and why council has no say of what goes on with the city insurance, because it does deal with finances. The people in the city of Vienna, they don't have, I mean, the 16 or whatever the committee consists of does not deal with the numbers of our insurance. You know, they see 1.27 million, and that's what we got. Let's go see what we can get. You know, and that's what I feel goes on. So I know I'm missing some things. You know, I've never seen the past 3 years how many quotes have been received, how many quotes Schwindeman gives us. You know, I've never been privileged to that information. You know, and that's just, it's just, to me, to pay $83,000 of $1.27 million, that's spreading a lot to the citizens of Vienna for city insurance. And I'd appreciate it. When I sent this email out to the group, you know, I didn't want this to be a Mike Elam thing. You know, I want it to be the city of Vienna, the elected officials, to talk about how you guys feel. Because one thing, Mayor, and this is not to do with, I still remember when you took Roger and I at the utility board meeting, you first got elected, you said, Mike, I want you guys to ask questions. I don't want you to sit there and just answer, show up and vote. And that's what I've done, and I know that's what Councilman Conley's done. And we've got a bad rap with some people, but that's all right, because that's what the citizens want. I'm asking questions. I'm doing nothing more than what you asked me to do 2 years ago. So there's nothing personal against Mayor Rapp. I like you as a person, but then again, when it comes to the mayor thing, I have questions about how things are done, and this is a big thing for me as far as the city insurance. Anybody else have any comments about that?
Well, to follow up with what you said, I'm kind of going down the same path. I did also request information and documentation prior to the Schwindeman presentation. I asked to be provided with whatever documentation was given to the Schwindeman agency to allow them to go out onto the open market and get competitive quotes. I asked then to see the documentation of anything, bids, quotes that were given from the Schwindeman agency back to the city. I basically got nothing as well. The response was we gave Schwindemans nothing. So if we gave them nothing, then how did they know what to take to the marketplace? Then as far as any documentation that came back from Schwindeman to the city, I was told that Mr. Schwindeman would be giving us a handout when he made his presentation. And we was privileged to get one page that, quite frankly, pretty much justified to me his services rendered, but not really much else. So, you know, there again, I have a lot of the same questions. When was our last committee meeting, for example? When did that last take place? And I don't know who I'm asking the question to, but, you know, those are questions we need answers to. Are there minutes available to that meeting? Surely somebody here was in the last meeting and know the answers.
The answer is yes.
Okay, there are minutes available.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would like council to have a copy of those minutes, please. What decisions are made by the committee?
You know, it's interesting.
Here we go.
You talk about all the things that you've asked for that you've never received, but every time that we go out for an insurance bid, the Schwindeman Company searches out whatever options there are in the marketplace and submits our information to these various companies. When the bid packets, or however they do that, because they do it and we don't have access to those things because it's employee information, they come back and they make a recommendation of various platforms that you can choose from. Every one of those platforms is available. Stephanie has every one of them on hand, and I know that other people have asked for that and have gotten it. There are no secrets from it, and when you look at the numbers of the different companies, it will say that, for example, Company A refused to bid, Company B refused to bid, Company C submitted a bid, or whatever it is. But every one of the companies that was reached out to has a response. And it will tell you the number of companies that were willing to look at the information that we have, because we are such a small group, and make an offering to give us insurance. So when you say that, there are no secrets. I mean, it's very plain. Stephanie has every bit of that in a file. And you know, it's interesting. You know, Stephanie's not here this evening because she's off for a little while, and you know, Mr. Leach is not here, and he's chairman of the finance committee. And so, you know, we asked if we could postpone this until we had people here that could give you the specifics, but that was not acceptable. So whatever you're asking for, you'll just have to be patient, Roger. And when we get a chance to get Stephanie back, we will get you those answers because they're in her files or in her computer.
That's quite all right. I understand they're not here. And I also understand that there's plenty of conversations that we need to get on the table. And there again, I absolutely get what you're saying. However, if you're asking for a bid for a police car, There's a bid packet that goes out that tells them what you want to buy. My question is, what is in the bid packet that's given to the Schwindeman agency that tells them the coverage that the city wants? It's the same thing as buying a police car. What do you want to be bid? That's my question. And if you don't have that answer now, it's certainly an answer. And that's why I absolutely made the statement when we talked about tabling this, that there's no sense in tabling it because this discussion is not going to be finished tonight. This is going to be ongoing. So there's time to get the answers, but those are answers that we need to have. How many bids do we typically receive? What are those bids? Are those quotes then taken before the committee for a review once we receive them?
Yes.
But again, we have no, I asked for that last week, we have no procedure, we have no, and according to the ordinance that Kim read, it's the city to pick these things. We have no ordinance of how this is done. Is that a true statement? Because I received nothing.
There's not an ordinance that sets up the insurance commission. There's not an ordinance that sets up any of the procedure that we've talked about. This is one of the cases in the city, and a lot of West Virginia cities, and I imagine other small places around the country do it the same way. It's a kind of a case of we've done it this way, we've always done it this way, and that's just the way that it goes. But ultimately, council, the ordinance that matters is council's approval, and you do have, I mean, not ordinance, but through the budget process. I mean, that's one of the ways you exercise control. Council can request all of those things, and councils have always had the authority to request those things because those are part and parcel of helping you decide your budget.
But we vote on the whole budget. We never vote on any kind of insurance.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess what I'm trying to say is nobody's ever asked to say, hey, this is what the insurance commission does this, or this, whatever, the committee, whatever it is, with the department heads. But none of the councils since I've been here have ever said, well, we want to see X, Y, and Z. You can ask for those things, which is what you're doing now. You're asking to see those things as they come in as part of your review. The same as you would ask for what kind of cruiser is on bid down at is on bid with the state. You have the authority to ask for those things. It's just you're only now, council's only in the last year or so chosen to exercise that authority. But you can ask.
There's some things you can't ask.
Well, you can't ask specific. I can't ask specific names.
High blood pressure,
Right.
diabetes, or
Right.
anything dealing with an employee, which
Right,
he can, when he gets his release, send out the information. But
That
I can't ask,
That's accurate. You cannot ask for specific ailments.
Nor
but
would
that's
any
not-
of us be interested in that information to start with.
but that's some of the things that he has to ask. I mean, each year, I don't know how many times a year, there are times when the employees meet here and they have nurses here to take blood pressure, blood work. They're offered
That's part of the package. That's
C,
part of the
shot.
package that
All this
they
stuff
buy.
is to reduce the cost of the insurance that he sends out to people to bid on. But we can't get that information because that's private information that he.
I'm only interested in the bid packet.
Yeah, I don't care about that, Bruce. I mean, nothing against that. That's here. I'm talking about the whole process of how our insurance is chose when it hasn't gone up in 19 years, and we have nothing in writing, like Russ said, until the last year and a half. That means even ask about insurance. It continues to go up and up and up every year. When it's 15% of your budget for the city of Vienna, something needs to be done, and that's my whole thing. And what that process is, that's why I wanted to have this discussion. I know Mr. Leach and Mr. Rapp wanted to postpone it. This isn't going to be a one weekend thing. I'll ask for this to be on the agenda every Thursday because we can't keep waiting until it's vote on budget time. I mean, we need to have solid answers instead of, well, we have a committee and who's on this committee? What's the regulations? What's the stipulations? What information they given? What are they doing? I mean, I've never heard of any kind of organization that lets their employees pick their insurance before city council or anybody has to look at it. And that's what I don't understand. You know, that's why I bring this up, because I've run nursing homes before. We don't have these things, but I know that how insurance is chosen there, and it's not by the employees.
You know, I feel that we can do some things to reduce the premiums. But in order to do that, we all have to be involved in the process, not just a select few. May I ask, when will have we scheduled the next committee meeting? When will it take place?
We have not.
So we're coming up on the end of the budget, but yet we haven't even scheduled a committee meeting yet.
You know, I don't know how many times I have to repeat this, so I'll do it one more time. When the information is given to Mark, which typically he uses whatever our policy is now, and goes out in the marketplace and says, this is the coverage we have now, what can you fill in the same levels that we have now? And that's what the other companies bid on based on our risk assessment of the condition of our employees, which, as Bruce alluded to, you know, we're not privy to that because it's private personal information, but for an insurance company, it is the benchmark. Obviously, people that have more risk, insurance is higher. And so that's how that's done. We don't have any information as far as our employees go, but as of right now, Mr. Schwendeman has not gotten back to us to say, I have answers from whatever companies he has reached out to, and until he does, there is nothing to be discussed. Once he calls and says, okay, we have the information, we need to get together and talk about this, then, as Mr. Skogstad said, the way it has always been done in the past is we've always got a committee together of a representative from every department to share with them the information, because it's easier for a guy in your crew to go back and say to the people that you work with, here's what coverages and here's what things are being talked about as part of your benefits. And so at that time, you know, typically Mr. Schwendeman will say, here's my opinion of what the best value is for your employees, or explain options of things that have come up that can be added, or if they need to be subtracted, whatever. And that gives us an overview of the different policies that have been submitted at whatever levels there are. That, I mean, realistically, there's not a lot of wiggle room in insurance policies between the deductibles that your employees pay and things like your prescription plan. All the rest of it's pretty boilerplate. And, you know, they all have the same set of standards that they measure risk off of. And so there has not been a committee meeting set yet, because Mr. Schwendeman does not have the information back. Once he calls and says, okay, now we're ready to talk, he will come in and he will show whatever the options are and whatever information has been given. As far as the transparency, every piece of information that has been gathered is available at any time if you call Stephanie and say, I want to review whatever that stuff is. Okay? There are no secrets. It's there. All right?
It sounds like to me that there's no bid package. They tell him what they have and he goes looking. That's my, until I hear different, that's my spiel. You don't need guys to be ambassadors for their crew. There's no raw, hey, that we're part of our thing. It's just one of those things where the city is the employer, you know, and they're the employees. It's just, and respectfully, they just have to deal with it. I don't understand why this doesn't create some big raw row because, oh, well, we got to pick our insurance. Naturally, they're going to pick the greatest insurance there is. And you're wrong on talking about there's no difference if there's a high deductible or a copay, or that's totally misleading, Mayor
You
Rapp.
didn't listen, Mike.
Well, hold on,
I
no,
said to you,
I have the floor, Mayor Rapp. I'm talking.
Excuse me, I'm the chairman, and you'll forgive me, but when I recognize you, then we can do this. All right? Now, please continue, Mr. Elam.
I'm done, Mayor Rapp. It's just the committee should give him a bid packet, or I don't know. It's done wrong, Mayor, and for years it has done wrong, and this will just begin in many things, I'm sure.
So basically what...
Roger, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Now, I would like you to clarify something for me, Mike, because I didn't understand what you said. What was the raw thing about?
Well, you said a couple weeks ago, you talk about how, and it helps employee morale when they get to pick their insurance. Heck yeah, it'd be my morale too if I got to pick my own insurance. I mean, that was one of the reasons you gave for having this employee committee pick their own insurance, because it's good for employee morale. I don't see that. I mean, we're talking about $1.27 million is what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. And you know, it is one of the things that I do believe that if your employees are involved in the process, they have a better understanding of the costs that are involved. Ultimately, the decisions that we get on these plans are made by Mr. Swindeman, who is an expert. And I don't know how much experience you've ever had with group life insurance policies. So it is very difficult. But to clarify, what I said to you was, when you compare the various insurance plans that are out there, the only real variables that are in there is how much of a deductible you want to pay. And like prescription plans, if you want to put a high deductible plan in place where your employees pay $5,000 or $6,000 out of pocket, then that affects the rates. If you want to make it so there's large copays on insurance, on prescriptions, then yes, that affects the premium that you pay. And so that's what I was referring to when I said the only things that really are in there are the deductibles and options like your prescription plan. Now, did I make it clear that time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because I don't want to mislead you, because that's a fact. I would say that every time. All right?
My thing, Mayor, is just the whole thing about you employees paying 3%, 4%, 5%, and 6% for their insurance is just crazy. I mean, that's just my view. I mean, I represent citizens of Vienna. I don't mean to disrespect to the 81 employees we have, good people, but what's there is there. And when you have a counter city paying 15, 20, 25% of their total premium, and we're still paying 3%, 4%, 5%, and 6%, those numbers just don't add up.
Okay. Point taken. All right. Mr. Conley?
Excuse me. Will the committee meeting, when we do have it, is it open to anyone other than the committee members?
As long as there's not a majority of council there.
The committee.
Mr. Bibby is a representative.
It's not my place.
You want to express a legal opinion? Go ahead.
My legal opinion is it's not subject to the Open Meetings Act. It's not a gathering of elected officials. There's no quorum. This is the same as a department head meeting or any other meeting. At least the way, and I'm basing that not on anything that's been written. I'm basing it on what the way it's been conducted for the last however many years. So no, it is not open so that anyone can attend. Just the same as Chief Pfeiffer's. Do you still do roll call? Yeah. The same way as the sergeant meetings would not be available to the public. So you could, I suppose they could ask you to come. And as long as there's not a quorum, it doesn't become, well, it's not even that. All of you could come as long as you don't talk about it with each other while you're there. But if there's not a requirement because it's not considered a public meeting under the statute based on the way it's been conducted.
But you can attend if you don't participate in the meeting, just as a casual observer.
If they want you to, if they allow you to be there.
If they allow.
If that body allows you to be there. And again, I'm giving you an opinion based on something that's not in writing.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
It's just I'm basing it on how it's been conducted.
Well, I think as a city, for protection and transparency, we need to have something in writing and not just this is how we do it, because there is nothing in writing. And protect ourselves from any kind of thing, there's got to be some kind of in writing records, ordinance, something about how this is done, because I still don't know how it's done.
If that's something the council wants, I can draft an ordinance. But let me see if I can say it in a way that I understand it. Every year the council has, using the ordinance that we have with respect to buying or acquiring services, either professional services or a general service, they've contracted with the Swindeman Agency to essentially take care of the insurance issue for employees. There's been a non-public, I guess I don't want to say it's an informal group because they've met long enough to become a group, but they're a non-public group of the department heads and I think one council member, or I think the mayor, that meet, and they There is a spec I call it a spec. There is a list of biographical information, characteristics of the employees of the city. How many people have serious illnesses? How many people have what have you? That information is disclosed to Schwendeman. All of the employees sign a waiver to allow their personal information to be disclosed to the Schwendeman agency so that it goes to, I'll call it an insurance portal, but essentially it's a market for insurance. And they go, we have this, Schwendeman says we have this customer. This customer's employees have these characteristics. Their median age is this. They've had this number of incidences of serious illnesses over the past year. Can you give us a price or give us an insurance policy for those characteristics that has A, B, or C in it? The insurance companies then say, okay, we're not going to bid on that because we think you're too small and you're too high risk. Or they say, well, here's the proposal that we're willing to offer you at, and this is the price we're willing to offer you. And then as I understand it, the commission comes back and looks at those proposals, however many are or aren't submitted, and then based on that make a recommendation to council. That's how the procedure is written. If council wants to do it differently, council can do it differently. Those proposals, I suppose, could be submitted to council and be taken care of in an executive session so that you obviate disclosing the prices of the competing agencies that are competing for the city's business, which is allowable under the Open Meetings Act. And you can do it that way. Otherwise, well, that's kind of where you're at. I mean, I have other suggestions, but it's not my place. I'm the lawyer, not a legislator.
Is there a case where we use Schwendeman? I mean, is this not a competitive bidding thing? Why do we just use Schwendeman? Educate me on that.
Okay. Competitive bidding in West Virginia is governed by statute. Competitive bidding for construction projects is under, I think it's West Virginia Code 522, and it has a specific procedure you have to go through to buy construction projects. If you're a state, if you are the state, they actually have a services statute that says if you're going to solicit certain professional services, you have to do it by competitive bid. So they do a request for professional services. They have not reserved that power for municipalities. Municipalities have the authority to do services however each municipality decides. The city of Vienna generally has a services acquisition process that is similar to competitive bidding, with the exception of certain professional services, legal, consulting, engineering, anyway, there's a couple other, I can't remember what they are all in the statute, accounting and what have you. And then you can go directly to them without having to go through the procedure. And I'm abbreviating this a little bit, but so you do not have to bid for the Schwendeman agency. You can say, we are looking for a company that can solicit insurance agencies, has experience or can solicit health insurance, has experience soliciting health insurance for municipalities of under 25,000 on the East Coast or specifically in the state of West Virginia. Then those people, if anybody responds, which is you can see, well, if anybody responds, then you can interview those people and decide whether or not you want to contract with them. You can start to negotiate a price. So you do a request for professional services. And essentially, that's how the Schwendeman agency has been used with the county, and I don't know who else. But that's generally the procedure for professional services. So the whole thing where it's some sweetheart deal with Schwendeman, some people like to talk. They don't always know what it is they're talking about. They just talk, and that's fine. But that's just the way that's just the way professional services work in the city of Vienna, because former council persons have decided that's how they want to do it. So generally, that's how the procedure works.
And I found my notes, and it was Trustmark who submitted the proposal that was $300,000-$400,000 less. And I don't know why, where that went to, how that was proposed, how that was vetoed off, or I don't know. I don't know if that committee was formed then or not. But it was Trustmark was the insurance company.
Will the committee report back to council once they've had that meeting? And let me back up prior to asking that question. So it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're basically going to contact Schwindemans and say, we want a quote on exactly the same policy that we have in place today. Is that a correct statement?
That is the baseline that we start from.
Okay, who makes that decision?
HR, I would assume. I mean, it's just, you have to start somewhere. Okay, and so when you reach out to these companies and you say, here's the insurance that we have now, here's our risk assessment for our employees, what will you do? And then the options come in as far as deductibles and all of the other things that go along with it. So, you know, the baseline starts here, and then you can take it whichever way it needs to go to customize it by the choices you make.
So if council was to decide that the premiums that we're paying today is more than we can afford, then what would the procedure be to go to Schwindeman to find a lower premium policy?
Tell him what you want, and he would figure out a way to make it work. When you go back to the insurance company and you would say to them, all right, I want to take the option of the prescription plan, or I want to increase the deductible that the employee has to pay, that changes their numbers. And then they would come back with a revised set of a new proposal.
I understand that, but that wasn't the intent of my question. My question is, who and how do you determine what that scope is going to be given to them for the reduced rate?
Okay, Roger, I'm sorry. I'm not following you. Would you please ask me again, or in a different way?
The bid package, what would you do? Who makes the decision as to what you could do differently as far as lowering the premium on your insurance packet, whether it would be out of pocket or whether it be deductible, whatever the parameters are? There's not, and I agree, there's not that many areas to look at, but of the areas that you can look at that there is some wiggle room in, who makes the decision that those things could be changed?
Well, obviously, council makes all decisions on that because of the money. But in the past, it's always been a recommendation from Mr. Schwindeman saying this is the best value for your money, okay? Because he has information comparing all of the different plans.
I just have one more question, and then I'm done, and this is simply a question. And I'm not sure who I'm asking this to. Maybe it would be an HR question that needs to answer when they are available. But my question would be, have we in the past had employees with adult children between the ages of 18 and 26 that worked full-time, but not as a city employee, that had insurance available to them, chose not to use that insurance, but was insured by the city, being paid for by the citizens of Vienna, which in some cases can't afford their own insurance for themselves or their families? And I don't know, that is a question that I want an answer to, but I don't know, don't need it tonight, don't know who that answer comes from, but it's certainly an answer I'd like to have.
Okay.
And that's all I have right now.
There are 5 other people. Anyone else? Okay. All right, then we'll move on. The next item on our agenda this evening is a discussion on the streetscape project. I received a letter the other day from the Highway Department. As you all are aware, we received 2 grants for streetscape improvements on Grand Central Avenue. The engineering firm of Burgess & Nyepel was hired to do the engineering study for all of the improvements that are being discussed. The woman that is in charge of the project is now wanting direction on which way to go. So it is going to be up to council to make a decision of what area on Grand Central Avenue we would like to start this project on. It's going to have to be done in phases because it's an expensive project. The city will be required to do a 20% match. The engineering was paid for 100% by the state, but of the streets between 23rd Street all the way to 34th Street. There are various blocks in there that they would like some direction on where we would like them to focus the Phase 1 at. So, for example, from 23rd Street to 25th Street, there's basically nothing that can be done there because of the businesses that are there. When you come up to the block at 25th Street going forward, there's projected improvements there in front of the little strip mall that's there. And then the United Bank corner has to stay the same. And then when you move on up from 28th Street all the way up to 34th Street, there are improvements there with enhanced safety items and kickouts, new sidewalks, new lighting. When you come around on the other side, from the Neal School side back up to basically where Harbor Freight starts, there can be improvements done there, all the way up to as far as all the way up to 34th Street on that side of the road. So they are looking for us as a group to decide where to start. As was mentioned earlier this evening, they have started the new project there at 28th Street. So that would be one of the areas that I would want to consider for new enhancements, if that's an area that is to be freshened up with new buildings and new landscaping and everything. If we use our grant money to improve the sidewalks and the safety and the lighting there, it would be a nice enhancement. But at any rate, that's an item that I'll put back on the agenda. I wanted to bring that to your attention this evening because we need to make a decision so that we can tell them we would like to start in this block area or the north side or whatever side of the road we want to start on, because they obviously realize that we can't do it all at once, so they want us to give them a target zone in order to start this project. So, yes, sir.
In what form do you want our recommendations? Just when it's on the agenda for that, or just get the information to you? Or?
I think because of I'll just put it back on the agenda for next meeting. Or have you already sent the agenda out, Kathy? Okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for next week. It's just, I don't honestly think that we're going to get started on this very quickly. I've indicated to her that until we get our budget balanced and we know what kind of funds we have, that I'm not interested in moving forward with any match money, but she wants a direction so that she can target the continued planning stages. So we'll put it back on the agenda, and if someone has a suggestion, if not, then we'll bring something forward and we'll go from there. Yes, sir, Bruce, you look like you have a question.
Does she already have some engineering plans on certain sections that we might be able to see? Because right now I'm thinking of 28th Street east side up. A lot of that is not handicap accessible, and the curbs are high. They're unbelievable. I think that's one area that we should target, but I haven't seen any plans about the rest of it. But I think that's one area there that should be targeted.
That's fine. And yes, I have, I've got paperwork that, Burgess and Niples prepared Phase 1, Phase 2, all of the drawings, pictures, conceptual drawings, etc. for that, but it depends on what area you want to look at. So, yes, that documentation is right here and you're welcome to look at it. I will say this, the area that you're speaking to is going to be one of the more difficult ones to do, right, because of how that two-step sidewalk is done, right, because of the access into those buildings. So that's probably the area that needs it more than any, but it will also be the most difficult. So anyway, yeah,
there was a couple citizens. I know we have a lot of walkers in our town, and they questioned me about, is there any future on down the road plans to increase the lighting? Because our sidewalks look great, the ones they're doing now. On 20th Street where I live, they're doing a great job with that stuff. Is there any? Because I do, and when they walk at night, there's our street lights in the middle, they give off that yellow glare, and for safety reasons, is there any plan in the future or anything we could look at in the future about enhancing our lighting for the citizens to be able to see better on those, without, making Grand Central lit up all the way like, like New York City, but is there any chance we could make it brighter or change those lights or?
Are you asking about Grand Central, Mike, or streets in the neighborhoods?
No, Grand Central.
We have
I think
the
that
option.
can be part of this process.
Yeah, well,
Trees are.
we pay for all of those street lights, so the power company will add as many as we want, as long as the poles, are accessible. Sometimes they have too many transformers on them, but generally, you can pick out almost any pole and get a light put on it.
Okay.
Okay? If you have specific poles, I just need the pole number off of it. Okay?
Thank you.
And so if you have target areas that you're referring to, that's pretty easy. Yeah, it takes a little while to get it done because the power company is busy, but we can do that.
Cool.
Okay?
Mayor?
With LED lights, they don't give the yellow cast. They're brighter and they're more cost effective, so some of those lights could start being changed out. It would be an asset and so what Mr. Elam is asking.
Yeah, we do have a tremendous amount of walkers. Mr. Conley?
Do we have any cost analysis from Burgess and Nyepel yet on a per block basis or a two-part basis, one side of the street, the other side of the street? I know that was supposed to be part of their scope of work, and contractually they had 12 months to complete that, and they're coming up on that pretty quickly. So I'm just wondering what kind of cost we're talking about.
They are required to have a meeting at the 30% mark and at the 90% mark. We have had the 30% mark. We have not had that 90% mark yet.
Okay.
I believe that this is part of the process that they need in order to complete those last calculations, because we need to target them to tell them, okay, we're going to do these 3 blocks here, or 3 blocks here and 2 blocks there, whatever, so we can break it up. But they have not completed that 90% report yet.
Okay, I want to just clarify a couple things. Currently, budget. Currently, the grant that we have is for nothing but design only. Once that 12-month contractual obligation for the scope and design has been completed, it then has to go to the state for approval. After the state approves it, then the construction grants can be applied for. So right now, the construction grants don't exist. They haven't been applied for yet. The applications then can only be applied for November through January of any given year. And as Mayor alluded to, and this is something I think we all need to be thinking about, there is a 20% match for the city. I expect this to be a very, very expensive project. And I think we have a great city. I think there's a lot of things that attract people to here. Grand Central Avenue being one of them, but at the same time, I think when we go talking about 20% of what could be an extremely big number, we need to really think about, is this a want or a need? Even though it is a grant, 200 or 20% of $500,000 is a big number, and I'm not saying that's the number, I'm just throwing that out. But it's going to be very costly. We need to, I believe, look at functionality versus pretty. I mean, there's a difference between, obviously, if a sidewalk needs replaced, let's just fix a sidewalk. But we don't need to put up $250,000 worth of fancy lights. Street lights are fine. I think that we need to look at, there again, functionality, but not necessarily something that we want because it's pretty and it would look good in New York City. And I guess my concern is that 20%, whatever that number is, could be used for our aging infrastructure. You know, we've got a lot of things that need to be addressed. You know, we could use that money for an additional miles of blacktop for our city streets. So I think we just need to think about this project in general, not just assume that it's automatic and that it's going to happen.
If you take the time to go to Parkersburg and look at 5th Street, around Kimes Funeral Home and all the way down. You'll see the stonework, the new lighting, all of the enhancements that have been done. They've also done projects on Avery Street, so you can actually see what some of the design work is. You know, Mr. Conley and I disagree on things, and this is another one. I honestly believe that the outlook of your town, it's more of an invitation for people to come here than what you realize. I know that we get lots and lots of compliments on all of the trees in the center of Grand Central and the flower baskets and all the things. And are they necessary? No, they're not. We absolutely could function without them, but I would hate to see them leave. I think that our town, the lights, the baskets, all of the things that we do, the entryways into our city are just part of the thing that makes Vienna what Vienna is. So I'll wait for your input on that, and we'll just see what we can afford, and if it's a project
and
that
that's
you
my
will
only
support.
point, Mayor. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying we need to see, before we make decisions, what those costs are, and then see if it's commonsensical to proceed forward with it or not, based on those costs.
Okay. Well, if you have suggestions, please bring them next meeting, and we'll put it for council's consideration, and we'll decide what areas to target, and then we'll get some number estimates. Okay? Anything else on the streetscape? These drawings are available anytime that you want to spend some minutes. You're welcome to come in and look at them. Almost everybody in the city has been involved in this, from code enforcement to streets to the police department, making suggestions on how to make it safe. And so there's lots of information here to gather. Yes, sir, Bruce.
I'm not talking about the streetscape, but Mr. Connolly said more miles of road work, blacktop and so forth like that. We do have an aging infrastructure, and I've always suggested before we do paving on streets, blacktop or whatever, we need to go a little deeper, because we have a lot of transite pipes in this city that are aging, and they need to be done first. So don't pave, dig up, get rid of the section of the transite pipes, and then pave. Otherwise, you're going to pave, dig them up, pave, dig them up, and pave, and you're just spending money down a rat hole. I mean, we need to do something first, and that's get rid of some of our transite pipes in the city. And that's the only reason why I'm saying that, is because every time you turn around, something is breaking. And usually it's during winter and summer, because of the thawing and freezing and going back and forth. So don't pave first, get rid of the transite pipes underneath of it first, and then do the paving.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. All right, so that's it for the streetscape. It'll be back on next week's discussion, so we can hopefully make a decision and forward to the folks with the Department of Highways. That concludes our agenda for this evening. I did have a question that you all asked, or I said last meeting in one of the presentations that I made that I would get you an answer for this meeting. On the health department budget, the increase from $500 to $1,000 is for increased training for pesticide applications. We have to send our guys out so that they can safely apply the pesticides for weed killer. So that's what the extra money is, because they have to go get recertified. Okay? With that, council comments.
I would like to follow up, if I could, on a comment that was made by Mrs. Powell pertaining to the lower river parcel of the Johns Mansville property, and also the response, Mayor, that you gave her. A couple weeks ago, we were told that the approval was in place and that there was basically 3 spots that was going to need to be remediated, and we was waiting on the weather to break. When we was doing the budget, we had $25,000 in there, and my concern was, is that $25,000 going to be enough to take care of that? And the answer was yes. I asked for a copy of the paperwork, the approval documents. I asked for a copy of the scope of work, and was told to go check it out at the library, at the repository. I did that. Those papers are not there. The documents are not there. I, on 2 occasions, sent an email to Mr. Hancock and requested the same. I asked for a copy of the approval documents. I asked for a copy of the scope of work. His comment to me was, "We're not there yet." So we've been given, it appears, very misleading information. Again, his comment was that he does like what he has seen at this point, and that he would approve that portion of it, and that would be the 3 areas. But that his main job and priority was to protect the citizens of Vienna, and out of an abundance of caution, he had decided that he was going to check 2 more spots. 1 came back okay, 1 came back not so okay. It was a hot spot, and that spot was going to need remediated. Because 1 out of 2 showed a hot spot, he decided then further, and I can't believe that people in our administration don't know this, that there's a piece of equipment that will be brought in to go over the lower parcel that gives real-time information. It will show immediately where the hot spots are and what the hot spots are. That equipment will be on site down there next Thursday and Friday, along with Mr. Hancock and Mr. Rebar, depending on what that piece of equipment finds. And his example to me was this: if we find an area that is the shape of Texas, now I didn't say the size of Texas, I said the shape of Texas, he said then we'll excavate the shape of Texas. That procedure, once that has been finished, will take him another 2 to 2.5 weeks to determine what the remediation plan will be, or maybe I should say what the scope of work would be, prior to any final approval given, as Paul Harvey would say.
I will do my best, Mr. Conley, to find you the email that I received from the state saying that they've accepted our plan, and I will forward that to you. Okay? I can't speak to the other thing about the repository, but I will. We have a checklist of all the things that are down there. Someone may have went in and removed it.
And next Thursday and Friday, they're going to be on site
okay,
to do the further testing.
Okay.
So I'm still concerned based on that. Where's that $25,000 going to take us?
Well, obviously, you didn't realize that the $25,000 is in next year's budget, not this year's budget.
I totally
And we
do
will have
understand
this
that.
done before next year's budget.
Okay.
Okay? Council comments? All right. Next council meeting will be a special council meeting scheduled for February the 21st. It will be primarily outside agencies and their funding requests for the next year. All right? Meeting adjourned. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that
Yes.
there wasn't 2 companies and I thought.
No, it's Burgess and Eichel. It's one company, but
Oh, well, I knew they were one company. I just wasn't sure if they were the engineering company or if they were.
yes.